Thank you so much, Jim.
Welcome.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Whitney Whitaker. I am the ESG Program Manager, and you all are attending our Emergency Solution Grants 2023 NOFA Webinar. We're super thrilled to have you all here with us today, and we hope that you find this webinar informative and engaging. It looks like some of you have already started introducing yourselves, but if you could take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat, stating your name, your organization, and where you are located. We will be taking attendance and also reaching out to you all at the end to send out an FAQ and add you to our listserv. So we definitely appreciate that. While you all are doing that, I would like the team to hop on briefly and introduce themselves. I will pass it on to Aaliyah.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Aaliyah, and I am an ESG grant manager. I work with grantees who reside in the MDHI COC as well as the NOCO COC. And I will pass it on to Kat.
I am Kat. I am the newest member of our ESG team, and I work mainly with domestic violence grantees. And I will pass it over to Holly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Holly. I work with the grantees in the MDHI COC as well. And I'll pass it to Olivia.
Hey, Whitney. Olivia still does not have access to microphone.
Oh, no. Okay, let's see. Give me just a second.
I'll send a chat to Jim, Whitney, so you can start if you want.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We will get back to Olivia. Just a couple of reminders before we get going. All attendees are muted and your video has been turned off. We do ask that you keep using the all panelists and attendees options when sending a chat. A recorded version of this webinar will be available on the DOH ESG webpage. Not right away, it typically takes about 24 hours. So we thank you for your patience there. And also a little new this year, we're kindly asking that you reserve all your questions for a Google link we are providing. I will throw that in the chat right now. But essentially, we would like to capture everyone's questions on the Google form and then send out an FAQ at the end. This way, we can stay on time and ensure that everyone's questions get answered. Of course, if you have any questions that need to be answered right away, please send me an email. I will do my very best to get back to everyone within 24 hours. So during this session, we will discuss the application process, ESG eligible activities, expectations for utilizing individuals with lived experience within your program design, and general program requirements. As you all know, our vision here at the Division of Housing is that everyone in Colorado has a safe, stable, and affordable place to live. We strongly believe that we can create a future where homelessness is rare and brief when it occurs and no one gets left behind. So a quick overview of the ESG program. The program aims to assist individuals who have experienced housing crises and/or homelessness, supporting them in regaining stability through permanent housing as quickly as possible. We all know that we all share this vision, which makes us even more excited to be working with you all. Quick overview of the funding this year. We'll be able to provide up to $10 million in ESG funding for ESG eligible activities. $2 million will come from our ESG HUD formula grant, and we will have up to $8 million allocated from DOH Proposition 123 allocation. It's important to keep in mind that regardless of the funding source that you're awarded, all the awards will be for ESG eligible activities. If you have any questions about this, definitely reach out. Program timeline. So as you all are aware, hopefully you know that the application was released on August 30th. The application will be due on October 6th at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We don't want to be very strict here, but we have to just because of our capacity and making sure that our review committee is able to review your applications in a timely manner. We will not accept any late submissions. Our hope this year is to have your award notifications out early November. And you can anticipate for the grant agreement performance period to begin April 1st of 2024 and expire March 31st, 2025. There are a couple of things to keep in mind. So applicants must have a nonprofit 501c3 or be a unit of local government. Costs and activities that are being funded must be eligible. We'll go over this later in the presentation, but definitely keep that in mind and become more familiar with the ESG eligible activities. Applicants who are awarded will be required to use HMIS or CAFE to record client level data. For those of you who don't know what CAFE is, it is DOH's HMIS comparable database for victim service providers. I know that in the past, we've been working on a lot of bugs within CAFE, but I do want to reiterate that HMIS and CAFE will be required this year. As all of your supporting documentations on the application, if you've been in that portal yet, you should be aware that your supporting documentations are required. You won't be able to submit the application without them. So definitely, if you haven't already, take a look at what is required of you to make sure you're getting those in on time. DOH will review applications for accuracy, followed by a cure period. Applicants may be contracted for clarification if necessary. So just keep that in mind that during this period, shortly after the submission, we may have to reach out to you to get clarification on your application. Meeting these requirements are necessary to be considered for funding. Perfect. And I do see in the chat, you're wondering if this will go on our ESG website. We will post it on the ESG website as well as the NOFA RFA page where the ESG NOFA was released. So moving on to application overview, we won't go into detail here. I think if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me. But one thing we wanted to flag is the supporting documents section. We want to make sure that when you are uploading your documents that you are using the appropriate naming convention. So we ask that you, when you upload your documents, to make sure that you have it labeled with your agency name and the document type. So for example, you'll have your agency name, W-9, or your agency name, budget form. This is just for our internal organization and making sure that our review committee will be able to understand the order in which you submitted your application. Let me know if you have any questions about that or run into any issues as you submit your application. Again, these documents are required for the contracting process. So for your signature backup documentation, please make sure you're adding that in there. Make sure that your authorized signature form is up to date. We ran into a few snags last year where these forms were not up to date. So please be aware of that. If there's been any changes within your organization, make sure you're submitting the updated authorized signature form. Your W-9 can be within the last 12 months. Sorry, this is a typo. It shouldn't say within the last 6 months. It's actually 12 months. But again, let me know if you have any questions. I believe most of you on the call have been with ESG for a while or are previous grantees. But if anyone is new and you have questions about any of these documents, please reach out. Documents for HUD compliance. All of this should be pretty familiar. For the certification of consistency with the consolidated plan, if you do need DOH to submit that form for you, please make sure you're marking that on here so that we are aware. You won't be able to submit the application without marking this option, but just keep that in mind. Documents for financial compliance. When you are submitting your ESG budget form, you'll just need to submit your overall budget for each component. You do not need to break it down into detail. We have left room on the application for you to provide a narrative on how you have come up with your budget. And again, if any questions come up, please contact me directly, and I will be happy to assist you. For applicants, oh, yes.
There's a quick question in the chat about where to get the forms online to submit them, the blank forms.
The blank forms, they're all on the NOFA RFA page. There is a section on there that should say supporting documents. So if you haven't been to our RFA page, Holly or anyone from the team, if you could pop that RFA NOFA webpage in the chat, please hop on there and get familiar with some of the things we've listed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So application submission, again, applications are due by October 6th at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Please be sure when you submit your application, there will be a pop-up that will ask you if you would like to save and download your application with the supporting documents. Please say yes. Please download your application and save it for your records. It will be time-stamped. This way, we all know internet is not always reliable, but this way, if something comes up and we don't get your submission, you will have proof that you did submit it. So please make sure that you do that. Please make sure that you do that. I'm sorry, Holly, is there any other questions in the chat? Perfect. Okay.
There's just a mention that the Google form does not have permissions for folks to be using it, so we need to fix that.
Sorry, I just updated that. I thought I had already done it.
Awesome.
Thank
You should be able to access it now. If you can't, please pop it into the chat.
Once you hit submit, you will get a thank you pop-up. If you don't, or if you just have any questions at all about your submission and you would like to make sure that we got it, please feel free to reach out. So application evaluation. So funding will be awarded based on the completeness and organization of the grant application, as well as the extent to which the applicant demonstrates an understanding of the ESG program and HUD priorities. The strength of the program design and implementation strategy will also be taken into account, as well as the past performance in ESG programs. So again, this is just a reminder to make sure that you are being thorough in your application, you're submitting all the documents that are being requested. When in doubt, again, just reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help and walk you through it. But otherwise, I am going to go ahead and pass it on to Olivia, who will provide additional information around ESG eligible activities.
Whitney, you need to promote Olivia or unmute her.
Okay, give me 1 second. Second. Holly, by chance, are you able to do it? My screen, I can't get out of the PowerPoint.
I can't. I already tried. I'm sorry. Jim said, as the host, you promote her. Sorry.
Okay, just a second, Olivia. All right. Olivia, did that work?
It did. I just got the pop-up. Hello,
Perfect.
everybody. Thanks for being here, and I am Olivia. I did drop my info in the chat, but she, her, and I manage the grantees who are in the Balance of State and Pikes Peak COC regions. And thanks for being here. Let me just find the right slide. Okay. And it looks like we're working on editing the permissions for the Google form, so hopefully we'll have you all accessing that pretty shortly here. So there's a number of eligible activities under ESG funding, and every grantee or every applicant rather is eligible to apply for any of these components. Just one thing to mention, there are a lot of regulatory nuances for each of these. So if this is a new activity that you're thinking of applying for, just be sure to check some of those regulations and also just review the ESG policies and procedures that we have on the ESG website under the toolkit. And we can drop that direct link here as well. It's a little bit buried under the DOLA website, but I think if you just Google DOLA ESG, you should be able to find it as well. So jumping into eligible activities. So the components are street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing, homelessness management information systems, which is HMIS, and administration. And this is just a pretty easy layout to show kind of who you're serving under each of these components, but I'll go into them a little bit more in depth in these next few slides. Next slide, please. So emergency shelter, this has two main components under its activity bucket, but essentially, emergency shelter can be used for providing services within an emergency shelter to households experiencing homelessness and fund the operating costs in order to provide those services. This can include day shelters if the purpose is to provide temporary shelter and it does not require any sort of occupancy or lease agreement. And so under these components, we have essential services, which is basically the services that you are providing in order to directly support the clients you're serving. So this could be case management, so staff time used directly to provide case management to people experiencing homelessness and clients of your shelter. It could be providing childcare or education or other sorts of payments to support households experiencing homelessness to kind of move towards a more stable situation, including like health services and substance use services. And then you could also use this for transportation. So this is limited to public transit. So it could be a bus ticket, or if you have Lyft and Uber, I believe that is also an expense that you're able to incur under essential services. And then if you have a vehicle that your agency owns or leases, it's also an eligible expense. And then we have the operations expenses, which, as I mentioned, is basically the expenses needed to operate your shelter. So it could be rent or security or utilities or food, just those kind of costs that aren't direct services, but are still helping your agency run your shelter. Next slide, please. So street outreach. Street outreach is similar essential services under emergency shelter, but these are specifically targeted to serve and support people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. So they're not currently connected to a shelter or other facility. And so you can provide direct services to people living out of doors in order to connect them to shelter or housing or other critical services, and provide services directly to them wherever they're staying, if they are not currently accessing a shelter and don't necessarily want to. So again, these essential services similarly are case management, emergency health services, transportation, and engagement, which is, it could be supplies such as like food or blankets or those types of items that are key to helping people survive, and a way to engage people experiencing out-of-doors homelessness. And next slide. So homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing, they do have very similar eligible activities, but there are nuances in terms of how you document these and how you record these expenses and activities depending on the household situation, and that's really where the difference lies. So homelessness prevention is, as its name suggests, designed to prevent a household from experiencing homelessness and maintain their current housing or relocate to another stable housing without losing their housing situation. And then rapid rehousing is designed to rapidly exit a household from their experience of homelessness into housing. So really these situational differences with the household kind of define how you would approach what kind of documentation you need, and how you would set up their service engagement. So under these, both of these activities, there is 3 different eligible activities. 2 of them fall under housing, relocation, and stabilization. And then we have just rental assistance. So financial assistance under relocation and stabilization, that can include kind of those stabilizing costs and those moving costs in order to just get a household into housing. So it could be application fees, it could be security deposits and last month's rent, it could be utility payments, and it could be moving costs. Services would be similar to like case management costs, so and similar to engagement costs, where it's the services that you are providing directly to the household you're serving in order to support them and help them regain housing stability. And this could also include like landlord mediation, housing search and placement, and just general case management time spent with the household. And then we have rental assistance, which falls under spectrum. It can range from short-term, which is less than 3 months, up to 24 months of support. And this can also include rental arrears back to 6 months. And so again, this is dependent on the household situation, and kind of how much engagement and support that household needs in order to regain stability. Yeah, and next slide, please. So HMIS, which is Homeless Management Information Systems, is the HUD and DOLA required database for reporting your services and engagement, just as a record keeping system and a database. We also can use CAFE, which is the specific comparable database that we use for subrecipients who serve victims of domestic violence. But this is a requirement, so if you're not currently set up with HMIS, just keep in mind that this is a process, so just be prepared to kind of make that transition, and there is some primary work that we will obviously assist you with, and you know, work with you and your local HMIS lead to get set up, but that will have to happen prior to your grant agreement starting, hopefully. We know that these things you know, can take time to set up, and we recognize that every team is busy, but our hope is that we can get you set up prior to your grant agreement started, so you can hit the ground running. So, sorry, just another note on HMIS, real quick, Whitney. So with the HMIS funding source from ESG, this can be used to pay for the cost of using HMIS. So it could be, you know, service fees for the database or equipment, and then also any staff time used to support HMIS activities. Okay, next slide, please. And finally, administration. So this is limited to 7.5% of your overall budget. And we will keep track of that, but hopefully in your budget submission, in your application, we just want you to be aware of that, and just you know, keep that in mind when you're thinking about what kind of funds you'll need in terms of managing your project. But this can be used for sort of overhead costs in order to manage this project. So it could be, you know, submitting your application. Well, for the next year, it could be used for like ESG 22. It could be a cost incurred in ESG 22 for your ESG 23 application. It could be used to submit your quarterly reports, or just general kind of coordination of your project. One thing to note is this doesn't include like case management time that would fall under another eligible activity, because this is something that can be incurred under one of your other activities. So just keep in mind, this is a limited fund. It has limited implications, but it is just another thing that we fund. So next slide, please. So we do have just a couple eligible activities that may be funded through ESG in different states, but DOH does not fund these, so we don't so we don't fund like renovation, kind of like big project renovation or acquisition kind of projects, and some other types of projects. And you can, this is mainly just for reference. These won't be noted like in the budget form or, you know, within the application, but this is just something for you to reference later on, because you may see in regulations and that type of thing that some of these other pieces are noted, but this is just to mention that we don't fund this type of work. And so as far as these eligible activities,
for more in-depth detail and just some more information on the nuances of each of these activities, you can reference the ESG policies and procedures on the ESG website. And then also linked within those procedures, we do have like references to regulations, and there's a couple websites that we like to use, but you can also just kind of copy the regulation number and it should pop up for you too if you just do a quick search of that. But that's just a helpful tool, especially if you're wondering, you know, if you have a specific question about what is eligible versus ineligible, that's a great place to kind of dig in and familiarize yourself with just all of those activities. Permanent supportive housing, I can jump in and just answer that real quick. So permanent supportive housing is voucher-based housing, and a lot of, well, I think just the mention here is ESG doesn't fund that because there are other fund sources that do fund voucher projects and builds and that type of thing. So it's just under ESG, we can't fund those things, but under DOH, we do have some other funding opportunities. So feel free to check out the other NOFAs and just the other kind of funding sources that may come up, you know, in future years if that is something that you're looking for expanding your agency. So with all of these eligible activities and all of your project and your agency's work to supporting homelessness and supporting people experiencing homelessness and helping stabilize them in a housing situation, we really want to encourage engaging people with this lived experience into the operations and management of these projects, because we recognize that lived experience is just a really important integration into all of this work. So I will hand it over to Holly to speak some more on this.
Thank you, Olivia. Yes, Division of Housing did convene a lived experience advisory group with members from across the state. We did a recruitment process. So we did have representation from rural and urban communities from all across Colorado. We had 10 members who participated in our first cohort. And the focus of the first cohort was specifically to look at our Emergency Solutions Grant Program, help us develop some priorities for our work with our grantees that is primarily based on guidance from our lived experience group. So we're very grateful to their participation. That group has now closed, and with that, we did have several products, including a final report and guidance provided from them, which I have linked here in this slide, and it's also on our Emergency Solutions Grant webpage. We highly recommend that you look at that. We are currently implementing the guidance from the Lived Experience Advisory Group with our ESG 22 grantees. And so stay tuned for more information and work on that. And that includes our ESG 22 program monitoring and data collection and our technical assistance. And that work will continue with our ESG 23 grantees as well. So it will include the group that does get awarded ESG 23 grants. We will have a baseline equity survey coming for all of our current grantees and new grantees that get awarded in ESG 23, so we can be sure we have participation from all of our Emergency Solutions Grant participants. We will be relaunching the group soon, and so stay tuned for more news on that. But meanwhile, just understand that in addition to funding eligible activities that are in compliance with the HUD ESG program, that our state of Colorado program is also really working toward following the guidance provided by our lived experience advisory group, and this will impact your application and implementation of ESG. So be sure to take time to look at their report and understand the implications of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so shifting gears now to something that's a little bit different. Many of you may have heard about the opportunity to be a fiscal agent. And essentially this means that instead of the state of Colorado allocating a grant directly to you as a subrecipient, that we allocate a general fund to you as a fiscal agent, and then you make awards to your subrecipients. We do want you to bear in mind that if you choose to be a fiscal agent, the implications of a lot of follow-up and monitoring of your program as a fiscal agent means, not only does it bump back your implementation process, because you will have to undergo a specific procurement, your own competitive process and award process, onboarding of your subrecipients, and setup of all of your subawards. But we will also monitor those subawards and require those contracts to be provided to us. But just bear in mind, as a fiscal agent, you do take on all of the administrative and regulatory responsibilities as a fiscal agent. So it'll set you back and also require additional administration. Next slide, please. So as a fiscal agent, you can be any organization. Oftentimes, like counties and municipalities take on this role because they also already administer their own ESG funds, so they're familiar with all the important regulations and compliance and monitoring and things. But one of the key things is, if you do think about operating as a fiscal agent, please let us know as soon as possible, and make sure you have all the policies and procedures in line to be in compliance. And we have a lot of information about that on our ESG page as well. But primarily, just bear in mind that your responsibilities include overseeing, as I said, the competitive contracting process, providing the technical assistance to your grantees, all of the accounting and provision of backup documentation to us, auditing and monitoring them in the reports. So we are open to this, but just want to make sure it's extremely transparent and clear about the kind of the administrative obligations of this role. And with that, I will hand it over to Aaliyah to talk about the ESG reporting requirements.
Hello there, everyone. As Holly just mentioned, in this section of the presentation, I'll be addressing the 4 different reporting systems that all ESG grantees are expected to use. So the first one is HMIS, Homeless Information Management System. So all ESG funded programs are required to use HMIS in order to collect client level data. And it's super important that the information that is put into HMIS is as accurate as possible. The second one is CAFE, and this is the HMIS comparable database that's required to be used by all domestic violence providers. If you have any questions about CAFE or you need to get set up with it, you can reach out to your grant manager and they can provide you with further assistance around that. The third one is SAGE, and this is HUD's grant management and tracking database that collects capers directly from DOH ESG grantees. All grantees will receive a link that comes directly from SAGE where they can upload their capers reports to. The last one is Neighborly, and this is the Division of Housing's grant management and tracking portal where all pay requests and quarterly reports for ESG will be submitted. And it's also super important to note that all documents uploaded to Neighborly, whether it be a pay request or a report, that it's uploaded as a PDF and not a Word document, an Excel document, or anything else, definitely not a zip file. This makes it easier to access for all of us. Next slide. So ESG quarterly reports are specific to DOH, and they're based on the calendar year, not the grant year. Each quarter, grantees are required to submit their CAPERS report into Neighborly. And as mentioned previously, you'll be sent a link from Sage with instructions where you can easily access these reports. Each report is typically due in Neighborly on the 20th of the quarterly month, and above gives a detailed breakdown of the quarterly report deadlines. You'll also receive reminders in Neighborly and from your grant manager as well. And then I'm going to pass it over to Kat, who will talk about ESG program requirements and performance expectations.
Thanks, Aaliyah. Before I jump to these slides, I just wanted to, I'm going to pop the question form back into the chat. It is working now, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them there. But I am going to be giving a brief overview of what requirements will need to be met and upheld throughout the ESG grant cycle. We're going to talk about documentation first. So we follow the golden rule. If it is not in documentation, it does not exist. So it is your program's responsibility to develop policies and procedures that are in line with local, state, and federal requirements. We have developed some policies and procedures that are linked in this slide. You're welcome to use those as a building block, but there are some components that you're going to need to add for your version, including screening and eligibility, documentation collection, and record maintenance, meeting generally accepted accounting practices, how you coordinate within your community, and policies for confidentiality, grievances, and appeals. Next slide. We do evaluate performance through monitoring. So oh my goodness, my words are all over the place today. Our approach to monitoring is twofold. So it's an ongoing process through which we maintain communication around subrecipient projects, activities, expenses, documentation, general technical assistance, and other ESG related efforts. So these are our regular communications with grantees. It's also an annual scheduled formal monitoring session during which we'll meet and communicate with subrecipients on predetermined topics, as well as any topics that may arise during that session. Monitoring sessions involve a risk assessment completed by staff here, so typically your grant manager, and a virtual or on-site review of your program. Notifications do go out a month in advance, and it'll include details about what we will need to review with you before and during, as well as the risk assessment. So whether the review will be virtual or on-site will, be communicated to you, and you'll also get to see that risk assessment that's filled out. Next slide. In the risk assessment phase of monitoring, your performance over the year will be evaluated using 3 to 5 standard factors based on your program. So all programs will be assessed on their grant management, financial management, and services and satisfaction provided. Physical evaluations of shelters and facilities and the fiscal agent management portion will be assessed as applicable. Each criteria corresponds to a risk category, so low, medium, or high, and a numeric value, which is considered a risk score. We use your program information to determine the most appropriate risk category, low, medium, or high, and we communicate it with you to plan for your formal monitor. Next slide. Our goals in monitoring are to be familiar with your program and how you're creating impact in your communities. We want to be a support for you throughout the grant cycle and mitigate any concerns before they arise or become findings. Basically, we want you to succeed and be prepared. We're not trying to purposefully catch anyone doing something. That being said, reviews are how we meet those goals. So there's 2 types of reviews, a desk review that's completed virtually and an on-site review that's completed at your location. And they're determined by the risk assessment. So a low risk typically corresponds to a desk review, while a high risk corresponds to an on-site review. A high risk score or on-site visit does not always indicate non-compliance. For example, if an on-site visit has not occurred in the last 3 years, it's automatically considered high risk. It's not a reflection of your organization's ability to perform, but is instead a chance for us to collaborate on potential concerns. So just remember that regardless of what kind of monitoring you receive, our goal is to support you and support our most vulnerable community members. Next, Aaliyah is going to provide some additional information for subgrantees.
Hello, everyone. So these are just a couple of resources that we want to share with you. Also, there's a lot of useful information on the ESG website under the ESG toolbox section. It has pay request guidance and different templates, pre-recorded webinars on ESG management, monitoring exhibits, and other resources that should help answer most ESG administration related questions. And the link to that website is included in this presentation, which will also be shared with you all. ESG office hours, I typically facilitate those, and those take place on the third Wednesday of the month from 9 a.m. to 9:30. I highly encourage you all to attend. The purpose of these office hours is to hold space to provide more specified technical assistance and guidance on a specific topic. Some of the past topics have included pay request guidance, monitoring policies and procedures, rapid rehousing one-on-one. Those are just some examples of different things we talk about. But this month, due to monitoring deadlines that our team is trying to meet, the office hours will take place September 27th from 11 to 12 p.m. And we will be discussing best practices for incorporating the league, which Holly spoke about earlier, the Lived Experience Advisory Group. And we'll be talking about how to incorporate that into ESG programming. Like I said, I highly encourage all ESG grantees to attend. There'll be lots of helpful tips and tricks that can help you better incorporate the league into your organization's programming. And then something new that we're doing once per quarter, we'll conduct community conversations where we welcome ESG grantees along with other DOH funded projects, and just to dive a little deeper into conversations around homelessness and how to incorporate ESG policies and procedures into grantees programming. So the office hours that's scheduled for the 27th of this month from 11 to 12 is actually going to be our first community conversations. And you all will receive an invite for that in the next coming weeks, but I hope to see you all there. And we can go to the next slide. So here are a couple of resources that we suggest you all refer to. The first link is the federal ESG regulations link, which is really helpful in determining which expenses are ESG eligible. And the other links provide greater details on the regulations associated with each ESG eligible activity. And towards the bottom is the ESG HUD Exchange website. There's also a link to the ESG program components and activities webinar, which I also encourage everyone to take a chance to check out. It's really informative. And then lastly, there's a link for IDIS guides, tools, and different webinars related to ESG. Again, this will be shared with you all so you can easily access all of these hyperlinks. But I think I will pass it over to back to Whitney, and she will wrap it up for us.
Thank you, Aaliyah. Again, everyone, thank you for attending this webinar. Going back to Aaliyah speaking on the community conversations, it is recommended that folks do attend that webinar or share out with our peers, just so that you can become more familiar, and it also may help you with your application process. And then please, if you have any questions that came up during this webinar, please, as soon as you can, submit your questions in the link. Administration costs are capped at 7.5%. So we'll definitely fix that on the application page where it is listing 7%. Thanks, Melissa, for that flag. And then Midori, which slide do you need again? I'm so sorry. Oh, yes, sorry about that. Okay. So here is the information for the office hours on September 27th from 11 to 12. We'll definitely send out another email for folks who may not have been on that listserv when this conversation originally was started. Yes, we will try to get a copy of the chat comments to share as well when we send out the FAQ. I think we've gotten to all the other questions in the chat. Team, do you all see anything that I'm missing? Nope.
Nope, I think you're good.
So we will get that FAQ out to you all as soon as possible, most likely next week. But we'll do our best to try to get it out sooner. I don't know if we'll be able to get it all out by Friday, but we'll definitely do our best. Again, if any questions come up around the application, supporting documents, the narratives, anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Yes, thank you so much, Medora. You're a lot of help in our chat. The Proposition 123 funds will be included in this ESG 23. However, regardless of the funding source that you receive, we will only be awarding ESG eligible activities. Thank you all again so much. Please reach out, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Are we still standing here?
Yes, team, stick on for
Stop
me.
the recording.